I've been thinking about this a lot lately, especially because over this past couple years, I shut down a lot of my business. I focused on my health, my husband's health. I didn't focus on the money. And what I realized is that we can actually live on a lot less and be perfectly happy. But because we're so wrapped up in the system, we don't realize that for many of us, we can get out. So, this whole system is built on this idea that we have to constantly chase, constantly struggle, constantly compete. But here's the thing: abundance is actually our natural state. Look at nature. It doesn't operate from a place of scarcity. A tree doesn't hoard its fruit. The sun doesn't ration its light. The ocean doesn't count its waves. The real insanity, the billionaire class. What I mean by that is they're actually perfect examples of what happens when you get stuck in a scarcity mindset. Even with all the money in the world, they're sitting on more wealth than they could spend in 100 lifetimes. And yet they're still operating from that place of not enough. They're so caught up in the game of accumulation that they've lost touch with what true, real wealth is. Real wealth has to do with having time to watch a sunset. Having the freedom to say no to things that drain your soul. It's about having the ability to help others without wondering what's in it for you. That's abundance. And the crazy thing is it's available to all of us right now, but we've been conditioned not to see it. We're told that we need to work ourselves to death for 40 plus years just to earn the right to exist. We're told we need to compete with our neighbors instead of building community with them. We're told that someone else's success somehow diminishes our own. It's all backwards. The real shift happens when you start to question these assumptions, when you realize that true abundance isn't about having more than others. It's about having enough and knowing when you have enough. It's about understanding that when everyone in a community thrives, everyone benefits. The tide really does lift all boats, but not in the way the billionaire class thinks about it. You want to know what real insanity looks like? It's someone hoarding billions while others can't afford basic health care. It's someone building a space rocket while others can't afford rent. That's not success. That's a profound disconnection from what it means to be human. This path out of this starts with a mindset shift, but it doesn't end there. It continues with practical steps, living more simply, finding alternatives to create value, building real lasting connections with people, learning to work with nature instead of against it. It's about creating systems of mutual support instead of competition. When you start living from this place of abundance, something amazing happens to you. You realize that you don't nearly need as much as you thought you did. You start finding creative ways to live that doesn't require you to sell your soul to the system. You start seeing opportunities everywhere instead of scarcity. The system wants us to believe that we're all in competition, that there's only so much to go around. But that's a big lie. There's enough for everyone if we can just change how we think about what enough means. The real scarcity isn't in resources, it's in imagination and courage to think differently. So here's my challenge to you. How about that, we start noticing where scarcity thinking is showing up in our lives? Where are you operating from fear instead of possibility? Where are you competing when you could be collaborating? Where are you hoarding when you could be sharing? The shift from scarcity to abundance isn't just some feel good philosophy. It's a practical way to break free from a system that profits from our fears. And the beautiful thing is when you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. You start finding ways to live differently, to create differently, to relate differently. And so we've got to remember that the system thrives on keeping us isolated and afraid, but abundance that thrives on connection, on sharing, on lifting each other up. And that's not just good for the soul, it's actually the most practical way to create real lasting wealth. Not the kind that sits in offshore accounts, but the kind that makes life worth living. The revolution we need isn't about accumulating more. It's about realizing that we already have enough. It's about creating systems that support life instead of extracting from it. And it starts with each of us choosing to see differently, to live differently, to dream differently. Because here's the truth, there are no scarcity of possibilities, only scarcity of imagination. Once you break free from that limited thinking, a whole new world opens up, and that's real abundance. That's real wealth. It's available to us right now. And you just have to have the courage to be able to reach out for it. And maybe you're thinking, that's nice, but how do I actually get there? Um, what I thought was just if you could think about a few practical steps that would move you toward the direction of what you're wanting. Um, One step would be looking more into minimalism, not the aesthetic Instagram version, right? But I'm talking about intentionally creating more simplicity in your life. One of the ways we did that this year, and we've been doing this for many years, is rather than presents at Christmas, what about focusing on presence? So, spending time with each other, being in deep presence with each other. It's a totally different experience than just having it all be about things that we have to spend money to buy. For me, it's come down to some basics like making sure that I have a safe, comfortable place to sleep, that I have healthy, whole food and clean water, that I have meaningful connections with people I love, that I have the ability to create and express myself. And very importantly, that I have enough financial stability to not live in constant stress. But when we don't step back and question the assumptions of this system that we have been raised in, we might um, do things without understanding that there are ways out of it. Like, what would it look like to minimalize your life? What would it look like to simplify things? Also, what's not on the list? A fancy car, a big house with lots of stuff, the latest gadgets, designer clothes. When you strip away all the extra noise, your actual needs are probably simpler than you think. When you need less, you don't need to earn as much. When you don't need to earn as much, you have options for how to earn it. And this is where the path to freedom starts to open up. So perhaps thinking about, what could you do with your professional skills if you were to leave the job that you had in the future, that what might open up, what could be offered to the world that would create value without you having to be caught up in the system. Could you turn a hobby into a side business? Could you invest in ways that create recurring income for yourself? What we want to make sure that we do, though, is not replace one hamster wheel with another. The goal isn't to become a hustle culture entrepreneur working 80 hours a week, which totally can happen. The goal is to create systems that work for you, not the other way around. So, my invitation to you is really to think about what might a transition to more minimalist, more simplistic life look like for you. How might you downscale? How might you create more freedom through the financial choices that you make? Maybe starting a freedom fund, not just an emergency savings account, but money that is set aside that buys you the option to say no to work or to change the work that you're doing today. Even a small amount can start giving you greater choices. Experimenting with different ways of living. Maybe you don't need the home that you're living in. Maybe you could downsize, maybe you could do things different. Sometimes people choose to rent because that way of living is more cost effective for them than owning a house. They'd rather take the money that they have in their home, sell the home, and invest that in investments that can create a revenue stream to give them more freedom, and then pay rent or travel or live in less expensive places. Like, so many options that we don't realize are available to us. So my point is that the beautiful thing about creating a life of freedom is that it's not just a destination, it's an evolution. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to start taking tons of steps in the direction of more freedom, but you can start to take tiny steps each and every day that create a more authentic, a more aligned life with who you really are. Every small step towards freedom creates momentum. Every time you choose simplicity over complexity, authenticity over expectation, creation over consumption, you're building a new way of living. So start today, pick one area where you can create more freedom. Maybe it's decluttering your space, starting a creative project, learning a new skill. The path to freedom isn't just about one big leap, it's about making consistent choices that align with the life you want to create. Because here's the truth, you already are who you'd be with more freedom. The person is inside you right now, waiting for permission to emerge. Your job isn't to become someone new, it's to peel away the layers of conditioning that are hiding who you've always been. That's what I've learned on my journey of stepping back, of downsizing, of making different choices. I love who I am today. I didn't know that she was here. I thought I had lost her when I was young. I'm so happy that she's come back. This creative, thriving person that I have stepped into has only come through stepping back, simplifying, minimalizing the expectations, minimalizing the amount of money that gets spent, and realizing that life is about so much more than the money. Let me know your thoughts about this conversation today. I'd love to hear them, and I'll see you again soon.